much for being here.
Thank you.
Let me get your perspective on everything we have seen over the last 48 hours. And it's to everyone's advantage if this president and this administration succeeds. We want more jobs. We want stability around the world. We want so many things for this country. Where do you see, sort of in perspective, what's happened over the last 48 to 72 hours?
You want real facts or alternate facts for this conversation?
Real opinions.
Real opinion. Hopefully some real facts. I'll say this first. I agree with your premise that just forget Democrat, Republican for a second. As Americans, it's better for all of us if the President of the United States succeeds, if things go well. That said, this has been, and this is an opinion, but I think close to objective fact, the worst start of an administration that we have seen in the last 100 years. Many of us had deep concerns that really were non-ideological, that this would be a president that does rather rash and bizarre things, that this is someone who comes in and is impulsive and more concerned about gratifying his own ego than doing the job. And look what we've seen already the first 48 hours. Going over to the CIA, lying in front of everyone about something as small as crowd size, talking about how many times he's been on the front page of the Time magazine, when you're standing there right in front of the wall of those who have given their lives in defense of this country as intelligence officers.
And we saw people who agree with your point of view come out in phenomenal numbers. Hundreds of thousands of people in city after city, the projections that were made, the permits that were gotten, the numbers exceeded what was anticipated. Having said that, how do Democrats, how do progressives, how do people concerned about Donald Trump turn that into something more than just individual passion? How do you turn that into some sort of movement or some sort of organization that actually moves forward on the issues that you care about?
You know, I have to give them credit. 8 years ago, the Tea Party was in this exact same position, and many of us at the time,
successful on many levels.
Exactly right. And many of us at the time, myself included, missed how successful they would end up being. I think those of us who are left of center are actually looking to them as sort of a model and blueprint of how, when you don't have the presidency, you don't have Congress, you don't have the majority of state legislatures, but you have passion and activism on your side, you can affect the debate and ultimately take control on your own. I would also say it is important that we just, on my side of the aisle, not just stand up and point out everything where Donald Trump is not just wrong, but outside of really the American norms. It's important that we also offer our own constructive agenda, having an aggressive economic policy. I saw Senator Schumer on TV a lot over the weekend talking about having a bold economic vision. I'm someone who believes that too often we've tried to blur the lines on economic issues with the other side. I think we need to offer a real contrast. I think a lot of folks in this election who decided it, who ultimately went for Donald Trump, weren't necessarily Trump supporters, but they are people who were so sick and tired of the status quo, they wanted any sort of change.
Well, it's interesting. When you look at TPP and the decision that he's just made, you have John McCain coming out against it, and Bernie Sanders.
I'm for it.
And Bernie Sanders aligned with you, who said if this is really something he's going to do, it's a good thing. But do Democrats have to say, okay, here are the 1 or 2 or 3 things that we're really going to prioritize? Can you go tweet for tweet, issue for issue? Because already he's talked about Obamacare, he's talked about abortion, he's talked about trade. He's moving through his agenda that he promised for his supporters pretty quickly.
I think we have to be true to our principles and our values. So on those issues where his positions actually align with ours, we're going to be intellectually honest. Infrastructure is one. If he really wants to do what Steve Bannon has talked about, a real $1 trillion infrastructure program, he'll find support on the Democratic side, and he'll have a tough time with the Republican side of the aisle. We will work with him on that. Unlike the Republicans who stood up and opposed Obamacare, even though it was originally their idea in the 90s, just because now Obama's for it, we're not going to do that. We will be intellectually honest. That said, when it's on all the other issues that you've mentioned where he is against our values and against our principles, we have a moral obligation to stand up and oppose them. And by the way, on those things, we have the on our side. When we're talking about the kind of things that we saw this Saturday, unbelievable record crowd. I did not think they would get nearly that number of people who came out. That was natural. That was organic. No one was manufacturing that. It shows you the passion and the deep concern that's out there about some of the things Donald Trump stands for.
Do you think his inaugural speech fueled some of that?
I think it added fuel to the fire. That was already there. But I fully expected an inaugural which would have been similar to his election night speech, which was very gracious, might not have in the end meant a whole lot, but at least was saying the right things. He didn't even do that. He doubled down on some of the ugliest, most negative, most divisive rhetoric that he had during the campaign. I put out on Twitter myself that JFK and Reagan spoke of America as a shining city on a hill. He literally spoke of American carnage and spoke of America as an inner city slum. That is a real contrast to previous presidents.
You know, one of the things that was pointed out over the last couple of days, including by Kellyanne Conway, is that Donald Trump got tremendous crowds. He motivated people to come out, just in the way that we saw again over the weekend. And I'm curious if you've checked in with your office, if they're making they're making notes or tallying up numbers. What's been the response from your constituents to what's happened?
Well, I can tell you in the last 2 months, and I was just speaking to a Democratic political leader about an hour and a half ago about this, we have had double and 3 times the amount of people who usually come out to local Democratic meetings in November and December. I was shocked. We had this in suburban Philadelphia. We now have right now over 200 volunteers who are looking to do something this upcoming week because Republican members of Congress are coming to Philadelphia. We generally have a struggle in January and February getting people to come out and do anything. Now our challenge is what do we do with all these people, especially first-timers who are wanting to get involved. So when I say this is organic, that's what I'm talking about.
So let me ask you finally, you know, if the idea here is make things work for the American people, where is the one place you think that Democrats and Republicans can come together? Is it infrastructure? What do you think? Yeah,
not to be repetitive, I do think it's infrastructure. There's no question, and this should be nonpartisan. It was under Reagan's time. A century ago, we were the unquestioned leader in the world when it came to infrastructure. Today, most nonpartisan engineering reports don't even rate us in the top 20. We want to compete and win in the 21st century. That's a Democratic priority, a Republican priority. It's something that unites the Chamber of Commerce, unites the building trades. We should do a real infrastructure bill, and we should do it bipartisan.
Congressman Boyle, thank you so much. Thank you.